Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call. Clerk Cody.
Supervisor Gooding's going to be a few minutes late. Treasurer Rice.
Here.
Trustee Hauk.
Here.
Trustee Milky.
Here.
Trustee Lannon.
Here.
Trustee Worley.
Here.
Clerk Cody here.
Do we have to make a temporary motion?
Automatically is by law.
Oh, okay.
Probably.
Yeah,
All right.
either.
Forget.
Yeah, I think
It's
we
usually
need
either
to,
her or I. So.
but I
Okay.
think we should make an official
Make it official. Okay.
nomination to appoint Kimberly Rice as the supervisor at this point in time until the supervisor arrives.
Support?
All in favor? Or,
Aye.
sorry, discussion. Any
No,
discussion?
no, we don't do that.
No,
Okay. All
let's
right.
discuss this.
All right.
We can make it 15 minutes. Mike, here.
We're already on manager's comments, thanks.
All right.
That's,
Approval of the agenda?
Well, no, you have to vote.
Oh, sorry. I thought we just did. All
Yeah.
right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. It passes. All right. So, approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right.
Support.
Approve, or motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And that takes us to presentations. The 2020 budget presentation.
Thank you and good evening, everybody. The manager's recommended fiscal year 2020 budget was sent to the board electronically, I believe, last week. And then you also have hard copies that were put in your respective mailboxes. The Board of Trustees, before the end of the year, needs to approve an appropriation resolution for the following funds. This year would be the general fund, the fire fund, the EDA operating fund, the West EDA operating fund, the special assessment fund, 2% grant fund, and then the respective sewer and water funds. The format of the budget book is similar to last year. You have a transmittal memo in the beginning, followed by fund budget detail behind each tab for the funds that I just mentioned. And then there's a section that contains other information in the back of the book. There you will find some long-term projections for several of the funds. New this year is the addition of projections for the EDA and the West EDA funds. The general fund and the fire fund long-term projections have been updated. Also in that section of the budget book, you'll see the recommended fee schedule and then drafts of the appropriation resolution itself, draft language for the public hearing notice. Procedurally, the board is scheduled to set a public hearing at your November 13th meeting, and the public hearing date is scheduled to be November 26th. We'd be publishing the public hearing notice in the paper on November 17th. There's one scheduled board meeting, regular board meeting in December per your meeting schedule that you adopted at the beginning of the year. That's December 18th. That's when we would anticipate having the action item before you to approve the budget. If we're not able to do that, then we would need to schedule a special meeting, which is fine, sometime before the end of the year. But December 31st is really the drop dead date. Some highlights at the fund level for the general fund. The operating millage stays the same at 1.0 mils. We do have collective bargaining agreement contracts that expire at the end of this year. With negotiations ongoing, the recommended budget reflects 2019 wage levels. The position of Community and Economic Development Department Director and the Accounting Specialist are budgeted for the full year. The position of the building official is, from a budget perspective, although we'll try to move that faster, is budgeted for half the year, and the McKenna contract then is budgeted for only a half a year. The employee health care, dental, and vision benefit expenses are projected to increase 7%, 3%, and 9% respectively. In the general fund, we do have $15,000 budgeted for updating the Parks and Rec master plan, that if we can get that done, then we would become, I think, eligible for some additional grant opportunities. Continuing our progress on replacing as needed barrier-free picnic tables and some grills throughout the two parks for about $8,000. We do have a project, Jameson Park improvements, funded. The total improvement program for that project is $211,000. General fund contribution budgeted at $70,000, and then additional funding from the EDA in the amount of $107,000, and some residual fund balance in the 2% fund of $34,000 to complete the funding for that. The annual cleanup day is budgeted at a little over $15,000. We do have funds budgeted for gravel road improvements, and as we've begun to kind of really get on top of those, we've been in some discussion with the road commission. If we don't actually refurbish gravel roads, we might participate in some ditch clearing activities with that $40,000. We also have budgeted $268,000 in support of the Isabella Road traffic intersection improvements, funding of $167,000 in support of the Lincoln Road project south of the bridge to Broomfield. And then there's $100,000 earmarked in the general fund for sidewalk and non-motorized pathway improvements. The total appropriation budget recommended for the general fund is $2,434,000. The projected 2019 year-end fund balance is projected at $4.1 million, or 170% of 2020 expenses. Regarding the fire fund, the township millage in this budget, we're recommending to increase that millage to 2.25 mils from 2 mils. That equates to $25 per year on a home with a market value of $200,000. It was back in 2018, the citizens approved, renewed that millage up to 2.25, so this would be levying it at that level. Total appropriation for the fire fund is just under $1.3 million. There is funding provided for the new fire truck purchase that you all approved a little over a year ago, along with the equipment and contingency in the amount of $478,000. We expect to take delivery of that early in 2020. We do have $45,000 budgeted in the fire fund to assist with the annual hydrant flushing program. That used to be budgeted at 100% in the water fund, but there is some benefit that accrues to the general fire fund, general fire operation, so it seems to make sense to pay a portion of that out of the fire fund. The 2019 year-end fund balance for the fire fund is $657,000, or 81% of the 2020 operating expenses. And then when you get a chance, do take a look at the other information at the back of the book, where you'll see some long-term projections on fund balance for both the general fund and the fire fund. The EDA operating fund, total appropriation is $467,000. We do have money budgeted for the pump station number 1 project. That's a cost share project between the EDA and the sewer fund. That was originally budgeted in 2019, but we were not able to execute that. You may recall the bids that we received came in much higher than expected. So we plan on bidding that out again at the later on this year and execute that project in 2020. You will see in the EDA operating budget the contribution to the Jameson Park improvement of $107,000 mentioned earlier. The traditional programming that occurs paid for by the EDA, the snow plowing along Pickard, the curb lawn, grass cutting, the flower planting and maintenance, the holiday lighting, the banners, all those kind of programs that occur every year are budgeted for in 2020. There is a transfer of $66,000 from the EDA fund to the fire fund, and that's per agreement between the EDA and the fire fund, or in the township to help support the delivery of fire services. It makes sense that the EDA should, since they're capturing part of the fire millage, that they somehow contribute to that, and we do that through a transfer of funds to the fire fund. Projected 2019 year-end fund balance in the EDA fund is slightly over $1.3 million. The EDA will be asked to consider this budget along with a recommendation to the Board of Trustees that they approve it at their October EDA meeting. So this budget has not been presented to them yet, but anticipated to be later this month. Regarding the West EDA fund, total appropriation is $453,000. Lincoln, this fund is contributing to the Lincoln Road project south of the bridge in the amount of $330,000. It's anticipated that this project will be completed in 2020. There's also funding in the 2020 budget in the West EDA fund, $70,000 in support of trying to get the sidewalk in from Township Hall down to where the current sidewalk ends at the Lux Funeral Home. There's similar as to the EDA fund, there's a transfer from the West EDA fund to the fire fund, the amount of $49,000 to support the fire service delivery. And the projected fund balance in FY 2020 year end is $705,000. It is unclear to me at this point when the north end of Lincoln Road, north from the bridge to M20, is going to be worked on, but my sense is it's still a couple years out. I would imagine there'll be conversation between the EDA and the West EDA fund to help pay for that project to some degree. The 2% grant fund, funding in the amount of $180,000 is budgeted for. That was a grant received, I want to say in the spring of 2019 for this project, and it's anticipated that the project will actually get executed in 2020, so we've appropriated those funds. There is a residual amount of fund balance from unspent money, unspent grant funds from years past, and along with interest income, primarily interest income that's accrued to the fund, that sits in the 2% fund, and so we're recommending that that be used to help pay for the Jameson Park improvement program. Regarding the sewer fund, that total appropriation is little over $3.7 million. There's no sewer service rate change recommended, pending the results of a cost of service study that we are recommending be done in 2020. That cost of service study would be split 50-50 with the sewer fund. And so we have $15,000 budgeted in each fund for those studies. Capital maintenance projects anticipated for 2020 and funded are $240,000 for general pump station maintenance, $75,000 for manhole mainline repairs that come up and are part of the ongoing annual maintenance, and then $75,000 for the bypass manhole rehab at Pump Station 9, which is due up this year. The couple new capital projects included in the budget are, as previously mentioned, the cost share for the Pump Station number 1 repair, $240,000 is the sewer fund contribution. And then we're also looking at installing the 3rd screw pump over at the wastewater treatment plant in the amount of $300,000. The projected year-end net assets in the sewer fund is just under $12.5 million. For the water fund, the total budget is just under $2 million, $1.986 million. Again, there's no water service rate change recommended pending the results of the study I mentioned. We do have the cost of service that study split with the water fund budgeted here. We do have $53,000 budgeted for some state mandates that are coming along that have to do with expansion of the cross-connection inspection program, including some backflow device inspection, and then significantly some lead and copper identification and data gathering that is part of some new regulations. We do have that portion, this data gathering and the additional inspections. That's budgeted at $53,000, and those services are slated to be provided by an outside contractual firm, so we would be seeking bids on that and bringing those contracts back to the board at the appropriate time. Capital maintenance projects in the water fund, $125,000 for well treatment, plant cleaning and maintenance, what we consider routine, but are part of the annual capital maintenance program. Projected 2019 year-end net assets of $10.196 million is anticipated. Regarding fees, there are a couple of small fee increases that are being recommended. One is a new fee. Actually, this is a new fee, not an increase. This is a new fee in 2020, and we have a fee for land divisions when a parcel of property is split. There's a fee of $100 per parcel created when they go through that activity to pay for the administrative expenses on that. And we're recommending that a new fee also be created to process the condominialization, and I didn't think I'd get that word out, of buildings that seems to be getting more and more popular. So there are buildings, might be a single parcel, then the building gets split up, legal descriptions are ascribed to portions of the building, and it's, if not more, it's at least the same amount of work as a traditional land split. So we have that being recommended. There is a sewer hookup fee, which is different than the service fee. Increase recommended of from $2,650 to $2,675, so it's a $25 fee increase. And then a water benefit fee increase of $25 is recommended from $1,175 to $1,200. And then a water hookup fee increase, again, $25 from $1,300 to $1,325. That's the extent of the fee changes. I've already talked about the information that you'll find in the back of your book under the other information tab. The budget itself is, if it's not already, it will be on the website, the recommended budget, and a hard copy will be available at the counter. So that's the overview that I wanted to put out there. I think at some point we'll be happy to answer any questions you'll have at this point, and then also we may want to consider if you want to have any special meetings dedicated to just the budget, and then how would you like that to happen? Some years you've done it by meeting prior to a regular board meeting. Other times you've dedicated a couple hours on a Saturday or a non-board meeting night to that activity. So thank you for allowing me to present the recommended budget.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, thank you.
Questions at this time, Mark?
Thanks, Mark.
Are you taking questions at this time?
I'll take questions anytime from you all.
All right, so I guess my question would be on the water and sewer fee hookup increases. The benefit fee and such, that's the one that's multiplied by the square footage in the REU, correct?
I think it's per REU.
So $25 increase would potentially be a whole lot more than, is there justification that you know of why they want to have the increase in that particular case?
Those fees have been following a schedule that was produced back when the plant was last upgraded, I want to say, and it is tied into the debt service schedule, and so there's a connection between those fees and the debt service, and so those increases are coming from that schedule.
I have a question on the installation of the third screw pump out at the wastewater treatment facility. Are we doing this because we need a backup? Because I know, how often do we run the second screw even? I know last week or whatever, when I talked to you about when we had all the rain, you were telling me that we even have both pumps running out there. So, I mean, if we don't normally run both pumps all the time, why are we gonna put a third one? Is it for backup? Is that why? Because, I mean, we don't have the demand for it yet.
Well, what we do have, and I'll provide this information, and if it's not sufficient and we need more technical information, I may have to ask Ms. Smith to speak to it or get back to you.
Right.
But the pumps run alternately so that the common load is spread between the two pumps. So they run, they alternate when they're running. I'm not sure what drives when they switch over and all that, but when one pump is down, and we've had that occur, then we only have one pump operating. And so we do have some exposure to events or another breakdown. And so the third pump is designed to help deal with
Right.
those possible situations. And then I think that's the high level answer.
All right.
Okay, allocation of salaries, I had a question on the assessing department. Are we not planning on hiring an assistant to the assessor? 'Cause I noticed we only had a very small amount of money budgeted for that purpose, I think somewhere around 30,000.
What we have in the budget is, we don't have an assistant to the assessor position. We have an assessing, it's a general assessing and tax support position. The budget contains funding for that position for 3/4 of the year, not 100% of the year. And that is related to the communication that I had sent out some time ago when the position was vacated back in July. And I discussed, I didn't see any point in filling that position immediately because of issues surrounding that operation. And I don't know that those have been sufficiently resolved. So I thought from a funding, it's not a position authorization perspective. That position's still authorized at 1 FTE. But from a budgeting perspective, it's budgeted this year at 75% of the expense.
So, moving forward to January 1st, are we planning on having somebody in the building to help the assessor prepare the role?
At this time, no. The part-time person is scheduled to be done November 1st. That was the plan, mostly to get through field work, and that is moving along well. And at this point, in all my meetings with the assessor, when I ask about if you're behind in other work, is other work getting set off to the side, are we getting behind in certain things, the answer's been no. So I'm fairly comfortable that the current staffing of the organization can provide that service until some additional decisions are made. And be happy to go into more detail about that if you'd like. I've explained much of it in memos to the board.
Mark, I just mentioned that I wish I didn't have to see us going to our maximum allotted by the citizens increase in the fire fund, but it does make sense as we look out into the projection of the fire fund, where over the next 10 years we're going to be spending down our current fund balance to probably a minimal level, a level we wouldn't probably want to go below. So
Right,
I can understand.
I can anticipate as you get closer out to that 10th year that other, those are 10-year projections. They're
Yeah.
as good as they're going to be, but
Right.
what I will point out is that in about 10 years, we will need to start setting money aside for the next fire truck. And I don't see that being supported along with the existing service levels at 2.25 mils. That millage rate will need to be increased, or general fund monies dedicated to that.
Fortunately, a few years ago, we actually lowered our millage rate down to 2 mils from 2.1, I think it might have been.
Right.
Also, in the fire fund, just looking at what the budget is for hydrant flushing, that kind of surprised me a little bit. The number that, it appears that we budget about $45,000 a year. And then there's another line item for hydrant repairs, which is
Right.
not that large.
And the hydrant flushing activity is considerably more than $45,000.
Really?
Yeah. The water fund is paying, and I don't recall the allocation, but it's not 50/50. It's there's a higher percentage paid by the water fund. Water fund used to pay 100% of that. They do it twice a year,
Yep,
and they have to go through
that's
the
right,
entire
a
township.
couple times a year.
And it's all labor.
Yep. Also, remind me again what the special assessment budget of 38,000, is that kind of unnamed?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. That there is not, in the budget recommendation and historically, there's not an expense side on that budget. There's just revenue. And that revenue is the revenue from paving, special assessments. The revenue goes into that fund and is used to originally pay back whoever might have fronted the money originally for these special assessment.
That's right,
In that
generally improvement in
In
subdivision.
some
road
subdivisions.
Improvements or lighting or something along those lines.
And the fund balance that is in there, and I don't have the financials in front of me, I want to say it's in the neighborhood of $60,000 or $70,000, but that would be, for instance, when we talk about the McGurk special assessment, and you need you need the initial funding to pay for those kind of things. That would be the source of that.
Okay.
If that special assessment petition gets, if there are sufficient signatures, it's brought back to the board through your 3 or 4 action meetings that will be needed there, and it eventually gets approved, we would end up amending the special assessment fund to account for the expense of that work in that subdivision that would then be supported and paid back through the special assessment revenue.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Can we have a work session on this? Because I have a lot of questions, comments,
Yeah.
and I think it would take a couple hours to do it. So if we can schedule a special work session for this, I think that's a good idea.
Here, here.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
We're good?
Yeah.
I have some high-level stuff, so it'll help me prepare for that session. And this is, I'm the newbie here, right? Yeah, so I may not be aware of some things that have transpired, but typically, if we're going to be putting a budget together, we've gone through our ends, renewed our ends, is that correct? Okay.
Those were reviewed earlier in the year.
Okay, so when I was looking at changes to the policy governance, I wasn't necessarily, maybe I missed it, but those are the ends that we're working off for this budget then, is that accurate? Okay.
Yes.
Well, good, I didn't know. And then on the cost and service study, again, this is catch-up. Is that study not just for the ongoing service fees and looking at how that's structured in the costs, but also the hookups then? Fees?
There is some distinction between all of that. There, if you listen to some of the consultants, they suggest as many as 5 studies need to be done. A cost of service study, a rate study, a fee study, and there might be another one. The cost of service study that's being budgeted here is designed to identify what it costs to, and how to allocate those costs to provide for the annual O&M in both the water and sewer operation, provide for sufficient debt coverage ratios, provide for adequate working capital reserves in case of emergencies and those kinds of things. So that's designed to figure out what all those are. And then the next question becomes, well, what's your rate structure going to be to pay for those? And the rate structure is traditionally a combination of a fixed component to your rate structure and then a variable component. And we have that here. in a fashion. We use residential equivalent units is a mechanism to fix those rates. And then to, in addition to the revenue generated from those cost of, for those service charges, there are also fees that are then levied or applied throughout the system to raise additional revenue so that at the end of the day you have sufficient revenue to pay for all your services. And so technically, and that was a much longer answer than you wanted, but
It's helpful. No, it's good.
technically, the items that you mentioned are fees as opposed to, what's the word escaping me, ratepayer rates.
Okay. And so, is the goal of that study, just so I understand then, to really help understand the capital liabilities then, long-term, like over 10 years, and so that we know that what the cost of our ownership, right, is, cost of operating is over 10 years, let's say? And so we know what kind of draw that's...
Service study, there is a forecasting piece in there. And we do, some of the data we provide would be the capital plans, so that we're able to
Okay,
fund
that's what I was
an
going to get to, yes. All right, so it helps.
annual
Good.
piece of that capital plan. And that includes new capital, replacement capital,
Right.
if you will, and maintenance to the existing capital assets.
Thank you.
This might be a question for Ben, maybe, because for the EDA. Jameson Park, what are we all gonna do out there? I mean, I see where it's gonna be 177,000, and then if we get 34 more from the tribe for 2%, what are we gonna do for 211,000 out there? I mean, I know the EDA, you represent the EDA, and I know that's 107,000. I mean, are we tearing down a building and putting a new one up, or?
What we approved was just strictly with our committee, was the code-related issues in the building because it's a voting precinct. So it was the bathrooms, the piping, bringing GFIs. It was strictly, the only thing that we approved as far as our committee is concerned was strictly, code-related issues because of the voting precinct. I think the other numbers are based upon a study that was presented to us by the township to improve the park. Something that we had
Right,
helped
we have
fund.
discussed that.
I mean, is that ever going to happen? Who knows? But that's not what we were just strictly code-related issues. I think it was, I can't remember the exact number, it might have been $30,000 or something like that.
All right, well, that's a question for both of you, I guess. I just,
And just to
It's a lot of
expand-
money.
yeah, expand on that, the EDA asked for a master plan for Jameson Park to be done. And so we took bids to have that done. We had it done. It was presented to the EDA. It totals about $330,000, I want to say. And it includes everything from facade improvements to the building, grounds, play equipment, parking, lighting, fencing, parking ballards or parking ballards in the parking lot, guardrails. They wouldn't be guardrails, but that type of thing along Bud Street. So there was a whole list of things that also included, the supervisor said, code enforcement activities. And it totaled about $330,000. And then the EDA assigned a subcommittee, and they reviewed that master plan and identified items that they wanted to prioritize out of that project. And so they did that work. And as that was being done, they also discussed that there ought to be other partners in the improvement project, if you will. And so that then brought into play the general fund. And just to put a clarifier on the 2%, that would not be a new grant application. That's existing funding in the 2% fund that's accrued over the years, primarily from interest income, and then in a couple instances probably where the actual project came in below the grant amount. And that was the $34,000. So the administration, taking what the EDA said they wanted to do in terms of their project list, and then adding to that to create the entire Jameson improvement program, other items from that master plan that we thought made sense, and we'll get the board a copy of that entire thing. So we had estimates of the construction for all of that, the actual work being done. And then added to that was some contingency amounts to come up with a total program for 2020, and whatever the amount is, I said, funded by 3 entities, and that includes contingency and then construction administration or project administration expenses.
When is this construction going to be taking place? Next year?
It wouldn't be during your elections.
With 3 elections, just saying. Better be done.
A big component of the EDA share that their subcommittee wants to focus on is the parking. And that, through the configurations and some other things, they're adding, I want to say, 12 parking spaces, maybe not quite that many, but adding parking to that parking lot, improving the lighting. And then the last thing I'll mention on this is that the subcommittee did its work, and the subcommittee report was going to be presented to the full EDA at their September meeting. They weren't able to have a quorum, so they weren't able to act on that. So it's anticipated that the EDA will be reviewing the subcommittee's recommendation, which is just their funding piece of the entire project, at their November meeting.
That's really good to hear, because this board and previous boards have actually had quite a bit of discussion about Jameson
Yeah, we
Park
have.
improvements. A number of people on this board have spoken about that they felt that was important. I don't know if there still is, could be. There's property that was for sale adjacent to it, and we kind of tossed ideas along that line of possibly acquiring some, so I'm glad to see that budget team for the project for Jameson Park included in this budget.
But I'll make a note to get the Jameson Park master plan distributed to the Board of Trustees.
And that will be something ahead of our Parks Master Plan project, our 5-year master plan for the parks, that
The way we
need
have
to
it
work.
constructed right now.
Okay, so we'll probably utilize that to help us with our Parks Master Plan then.
There's a Parks writ large 5-year master plan that we need to update.
Yep.
It's a couple of years out of date.
Yep.
We need to do that. That's budgeted in the general fund.
Yep.
And then we saw some more immediate needs for Jameson Park to kind of get it up to, although it's a smaller footprint, there's no reason in our minds that it should not be of the same caliber,
Absolutely.
albeit smaller in square footage than McDonald's.
Sure.
Be nice to have more than 2 swings out there.
This would add a whole new
Yeah.
playscape set to that.
I remember one night I went out there and there were 2 kids fighting over the swings.
Any further questions?
I like Lisa's idea about having a work session. I have a lot of issues too that I wanted to talk about, but, it's too
Are
lengthy
we
for
on Saturday
tonight.
morning?
We have to be after
Probably put
3.
out request for a doodle poll.
Yeah,
To
just
be
so
put
do
out
doodle
to,
poll
uh,
and see.
That's how we've
Respond to
traditionally done it.
Yeah.
The-
Seems to work
The
well.
first question I would
Yeah.
need to ask is, traditionally, the board has not liked Saturday morning meetings,
Right.
nor
I
meetings
can't do
that are
Saturday morning.
on other nights of the week, and so you've kind of landed on meeting at, say, 4 o'clock on the night of a board meeting.
Last year we did it November 15th, or 14th, so.
So just to help construct the doodle poll,
I'm
if
just joking.
Saturday mornings are okay, then we'll include, okay, I'm seeing no's.
I can't do Saturday morning. I just
No,
can't.
not Saturday morning.
Then I can,
We don't have any commitments in the building on Monday nights either.
Off Wednesdays could possibly be good.
Right. Or
So
even,
if-
even,
Meeting like
Yeah.
and
Wednesdays.
why don't I do it,
yeah, do
just
doodle poll.
continue narrowing it down.
Yeah.
If you do it.
Saturday mornings will be out in the doodle poll.
5 work? 6.
Do you want me to include any
5 o'clock would work. Would it work for anybody else?
time prior to a regular board meeting?
Sure,
Fine.
I would.
So
I
say
would go with
from
5.
4:30 or 5 till 6:30 or something. So
Sure,
those,
yeah.
those are good.
Yep.
And then beyond that, standalone weeknight meetings. And I think just for the sake of productivity, you won't see them scheduled longer than 3 hours.
Yeah, I think tonight was a good overview in terms of the presentation of the budget. That's what I wanted to get out of it. I've read everything. I have some questions, but I think at this point, I just wanted an overview. I think the specificity should come when we sit down in work sessions and then begin to hash some things out as to what are some issues and, what are the pros and cons of particular things, so.
I also encourage the board to, more than happy to meet with you one-on-one, phone, if you have questions, I'll respond to the entire board, because others may have the same question, so it can be done electronically with some questions as well. So we have something, what do you think, two sessions at this point, or one?
Well, let's do the
Start
one and
with the
see
one,
where we
yeah.
go. Start with the one and see. I mean, it might be sufficient. I think last time, that was pretty much it, wasn't it, last year? We had a work session prior
Yeah, I
to
think
our
we-
regular
right,
meeting,
right.
and we all felt pretty comfortable with that being addressed that
So
way.
just get one on our books
Yeah,
now,
and
as
see.
opposed to 2 and
Yeah.
canceling one if
Yeah.
not needed.
Yeah. Okay,
We'll get that out.
thank you.
Going once, going twice, any more questions? Seeing none, we close that item. And we move up to public comment. This is going to be restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. This will be an opportunity for comments only. There will be no back and forth answering the questions. So, anyone like to come up for public comment? Seeing none, close public comment. We move to item 8, reports, board comments. Start with board comments. Tim?
Report. I attended the October 1st Isabella County Board of Commissioners meeting, and a resolution was passed for the county to pledge their full faith and credit to the Little Tobacco Inter-County Drain Note. So 30% of that drain is in Isabella County, 70% is in Clare County. And it was clarified that that full faith and credit from the county is simply going to be for the 30% that is in the county. there was a little concern in regards to that. There's some talk about from the Finance Committee about the jail project. The county is now officially on the hook for about $228,000 of that estimated about $40 million project. They selected Clark Construction as their construction consultants. And there was a Farmland Act agreement that's going to place 191 acres of farmland into that program for 10 years. I can't tell you exactly where it's at, though. And there was a comment made, you've probably heard in the news about the Baldwin incarceration facility was looking to open up again and bring in basically migrant people. The day it was publicized that was going to happen, I know it was a stormy, wet day, and it was just commented that nobody came. So I don't know the status of it today, if they have been taking people into that area. But one of the commissioners made a comment along those lines. And that was the highlights of that meeting.
Mr. Milky, you want to update for the planning commission?
Really? Well,
You were on the planning commission.
yeah, I couldn't go last time.
Oh.
I had to resign.
Why
So
not?
Lisa probably can give that update better than I can.
Oh, okay.
So I went,
knew CDA you resigned, but I didn't.
yeah, and the planning commission. So I actually went and said goodbye and didn't sit on the board
Okay.
that night. But
All right.
do want to say I'm excited to be here, and I feel a little overwhelmed with all the material I'm trying to glean that you all have been working on. So I'll probably continue to reach out to people and say, do you have a copy of this? And Lisa's been really good about getting me some material, so I'll continue to do that and play catch up.
Bill?
Went to the road commission meeting the 26th of September. They approved their 2020 budget. Talked about the wind farm that's starting back up down in Township. They delivered 11,000 tons of gravel down to that. Their new sign shop is open, and the Pickard Street Bridge should just about be done. That night, they figured it'd be done before their next meeting, which is tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I think it opened, I think my mother said it opened yesterday.
Yeah, they were projecting that it'd open, their next meeting is tomorrow morning. They projected that it'd be open before their next meeting. So, that's it.
All right, very good.
Hey, Bill, on your road commission appointment. Meridian Road. On the south side of M20, as you'd be driving north,
Yeah.
we've talked about the road work that had been done between the creek,
Bridge
And M20? and there's that considerable hill we talked about that would have been nice to been able to shave out.
Remember, I told you, they said they couldn't cut that down.
Well, they had it cut down at one time, but then they built it back up before they paved it.
Yeah.
But some signage might be appropriate there. I was driving around Lake Isabella, or no, actually Canadian Lakes yesterday, and there's some signage that caught my eye about hill creates blind spot or something. But we got bus stop pickups there. So as you're coming up,
And
you lose, if you're back far enough, you can basically see the stop sign at M20. And then you lose M20 as you're going up.
Yeah.
But
I know what you mean. right there at the top
I
of
think
that
it
hill,
would
there
be
is a bus stop.
appropriate to, on our township side, to see if we couldn't generate some possibility of getting signage up there talking about either,
Bus stop
driveways,
ahead.
bus stops, hill, creating blind spot, some sort of indicator, whatever that verbiage on the sign would be. There is nothing currently.
All right, I'll ask them
So-
tomorrow morning.
All right, thank you.
They got their new sign shop open, so,
Oh, geez, put her to the test.
yeah.
And I don't know if there's other legalities, but I'm sure the road commission handles all those.
more questions for Bill? Paul? Yep.
All right, Monday, we had our sidewalks and pathway prioritization committee. It was my first time on that one, and it was a great meeting. There was a lot of discussion about, Bluegrass Road and how things are coming there. There was also a discussion about Crawford Road and, the plans for that, along with the connector pathway that's been put in place, plans for that. Another thing that was brought up and that had a lot of discussion is something I brought up a while ago, sidewalks here at the Township Hall. There's a lot of us that feel that, we need to get some sidewalks in here at the township as well. We're asking other people to do it. We should look into getting a study done or something to get, whatever is needed so that we can get sidewalks in here at the township. So, that's basically in a nutshell.
I believe we already have
We haven't
funds
budgeted for-
allocated for.
It's gonna happen.
There's
for the
funds
sidewalk.
in the
It's the
for
EDA,
it.
this one?
Yeah,
Or is it general?
the
fund?
west,
Yeah, it
Just
was,
west.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the west for the
right,
sidewalk.
right.
Yeah.
So they were
Yeah. I'd love
wanting to know
that's-
about
that's-
that.
That's
so,
budgeted.
Yeah.
Norm?
Okay, I'll be doing my report during the new business, section B. I'll go over everything at that point, but some of the concerns you had will be included in what I'll be presenting tonight from the 2% and the Saginaw Chippewa tribe, so.
At the special planning commission meeting, we were working on the zoning ordinance 11 through 15. We didn't finish those up. We're going to be working on the next meeting.
And we will have an EPA hopefully here soon. I'll report to that. So,
The only other thing I'd like to suggest is, there's several board expirations coming up with 12/31/19 dates. It includes all three for Construction Board of Appeals. It has one for Hannah's Park, one for the Chippewa River Library Board. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the ZBA. Plus, we're going to have to make a change with the Planning Commission for Brian. And then there's, for the Cultural and Recreation, there's also one vacancy. So we have quite a few coming up, and I suspect some
There's
people will be
4 for
renewing.
ZBA.
Pardon?
There's 4 for ZBA.
we
not
had,
5.
Ruth
One-
Hellwig already had, I thought we already voted her, approved her continuation of her term on the River Library.
Did we?
Yeah, I think we did that,
Okay.
like maybe a month and a half
Okay,
ago.
because the expiration date's still the same.
Yeah, it needs to get changed.
Yeah, so that will have to change. So we just have, certainly with the ZBA and some of the others, we're nearing, got a couple months here, 3 months, so.
Okay, so I'll get on the horn with gentlemen on the ZBA and see, make sure that they're, I know that John Zerby is gonna finish his out, I think he's moving to Florida. So we'll need to get an alternate there, we'll need to get Brian Nolke's,
That's the 5th.
Right.
finish somebody to finish out his term.
Right, that's
I
a-
had
Mhm.
did we get a application for the sustainability committee for a gentleman named Jay Kahn? 'Cause I talked to him and I thought he was gonna put an application, anything? I'll get a hold of him, because he was gonna finish out Phil's term. And this guy created a lot of work for me, thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, I would think we'd want to broadly publish these openings
Yes.
via our website, maybe a advertisement in the newspaper. You know, allow the whole community an opportunity to be aware of the openings, and if they so have the desire to apply, I think our community linkage should be as broad and transparent as we can get.
I think trying to get as much diversity and more people involved as we possibly can. I would think, too, that there'll be several people that would probably want to renew their terms, like on the
Sure.
ZBA and that as well. But so I think we need to find that out first, and then also, like you're saying, let's put a publication out so we can get as many candidates as possible and applications.
So like for Brian's spot on the planning commission, I know Andy Tyson had expressed interest to me to fill that spot. Or who, does that get appointed by the ZBA?
I would have to nominate,
Right,
and
For which
For
group?
which
For
position?
planning commission that you're talking about?
right.
Yeah,
That's
the
planning.
supervisor makes nominations
Yeah.
for the planning commission.
Right.
so we'd have to get.
Anybody
like,
can make
we
nominations
haven't
for
got
any of the
applications,
others.
obviously, at this point, so it's been so fresh that we haven't had much.
And we do have James Terry in here tonight that I
Yeah.
think might be interested as well.
Right.
In the audience, so.
We encourage him and
Yeah.
everybody else. Mr. Bacon, no question.
PC rep from the ZBA is,
My thought would be,
from the planning commission, they contact.
you certainly appreciate anybody who served on the board, but when an expiration date comes up, it means it's an expiration date, and that seat should be wide open to any community member,
Yeah.
would be my thought.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
And we confirm existing member interest by making them submit an application as well.
That's, I told Andy he had to submit an application.
Yeah.
It's just not too
And-
soon to begin this
Right.
process, is what I'm saying, so.
Yeah, because we don't want to have an even number.
We need somebody on the planning commission
Need to
as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And I will point out that I think the planning commission at their next meeting is going to be looking to appoint their representative to the ZBA.
Yeah.
So that'll take care of that
Yeah, we're there.
opening.
And I brought up in the past, and I don't know if there's a precedent for it, is that we do have alternates on the ZBA. I think we need to have an alternate on the planning commission. So that if somebody is gone, that you don't end up with a dreaded even number. I just think, that'd be something that, I don't know if it's possible to do that or
The
not.
statute explicitly allows alternates and speaks to alternates on the ZBA.
But
That's
not
why,
on the
But not-
but not planning.
Yeah, and I would say that
Yeah, I don't
planning
think-
commission rarely, I don't think we've ever had a tie.
No.
Always that chance.
You're absolutely correct,
And
but
then
but
it's
it's,
a big problem.
But we know what happens when it's a tie, right?
Yeah. yeah.
well, I
Tight
guess
ship.
we have had ties, and the motion's been reversed and ultimately dealt with and consensus reached, but
Yeah, you like to have an odd number of people on the full board, right? In my mind, if it's possible.
mean,
But I think the most problematic on planning commission is multiple people needing to recuse themselves.
Yes.
Things which create, and, we talk about looking at a whole range of various diversities to to fill these boards with, whether it's, your education, your experiences, your various interests, is just how you're connected. So that diversity would help eliminate some of that sort of thing.
planning commission could use more females on the board.
Right.
Currently 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if he's interested, Andy, it doesn't hurt to have a builder on the planning commission either.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're lobbying, huh?
Well, I'm just saying, I told him what he had to do.
Well, we keep it open to everybody, and we look at the candidates and we go from there, right?
Right.
So, beware if you're walking down the soup aisle at the grocery store and see me coming. In the corner of you. So, we'll look at the board expiration dates, and the next meeting, we should probably start looking at trying to fill some of those voids and getting people reaffirmed on some of these. So, but we've got a little time, but yeah, you're right, it's a good time to start looking.
So is
There
this
are a
the-
couple February 2020s too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yes,
yeah.
So is the staff at this point going to do anything to advertise this? Or do we need to?
We will.
Okay.
All right. Any more
Yep.
answer on this item? You good? All right, let's move up to item 9, consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. I do have one question on the item J, for fire hydrants. You can either ask the question in consent agenda, and just get a quick answer, or move it. I'm going to ask the question then. So, with the 2 bids, we've got one that's bonded and one that's not. But the requirement in the bid was for bonding. Is your reason why we accepted the bid that was unbonded as opposed to bonded? Is there any cost involved on the estimate with the bond?
I did not address that issue specifically. It may be possible that Ms. Smith can speak to it, I don't know.
The bid did call for a letter of surety, which lets us know that they can be bonded. It was not provided by the contractor that is being recommended, but that's something that can be taken care of before we sign an agreement with them. It's about a $200 cost for, this is a small job. If this was a larger job than $45,000, then that would have been a bigger factor, but because it wasn't.
Is there a reason why they didn't provide that?
Sometimes I think they just miss it in the paperwork. They brought their bid to the Township Hall, they didn't take it to the Isabella site, even though it was advertised that way, but we accepted the bid because there's some transition going on there. It happens every once in a while, as long as we can get that paperwork ahead of time, and I don't think it's gonna be an issue. This is a large enough contractor, I don't feel like they're gonna have an issue getting a letter of surety.
Okay.
So, but I did note it on there so that I could
Yes.
remember to make sure that I get
Yes.
that before we would sign an agreement with
Okay.
them.
Okay, was that question answered? Yes, sir.
I had warrants, so my first day back, I got to do warrants and saw no issues, so,
Okay. All right. So you're on the hook.
yeah. And I'm thankful for Trustee Hauk in filling me in that I had to do that.
Nobody did the warrants. I got it written down on the agenda, so if I see any problems later.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
We know who to blame.
All right, so we do have a motion and a second on the consent agenda to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will set the vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Consent agenda approved. We move on to item 10, new business. This is going to be approve a special permit 2019-06 for filling station located at South Isabella Road. PID 14-026-20-001-06 on the condition that a site plan is approved by the Township Planning Commission and all required licensing is obtained. Mark, would you like to lead us in on that?
Thank you. This is a project at the corner of Isabella and Broomfield. The applicant, while not the owner, does have the permission of the owner to submit the application. The parcel is a split-zoned piece of property, B4, which is General Business District, and B5, which is Highway Business District. A filling station is a use that's allowed in both zoning districts via special permit. The parcel is currently vacant. The project, in addition to a filling station, includes what I believe is the inclusion of a Dunkin' Donuts, which would also have a drive-through added. At the September 17th Planning Commission meeting, they held a public hearing for the special use permit. The Planning Commission reviewed the application per the zoning ordinance and voted to recommend to the Board of Trustees approval of the special use permit application on the condition that a final site plan is approved by the Planning Commission and all requisite licensing and inspections and whatnot, particularly as it relates to filling stations, are obtained. So that's the background on it. You have in your packet the material that's usually used to help you walk through the various items that you want to consider this application within. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the special use permit 2019-06 for a filling station located South Isabella Road, PID 14-026-20-001-06, on the condition that the site plan is approved by the Township Planning Commission and all the required licensing is obtained.
Support your motion.
The discussion.
We went over all the 10 items, requirements, and all of them were asked or agreed upon. It was unanimous.
I guess I would mention too that usually when an SUP is done at the Planning Commission, due diligence is paid with regards to possible special requirements, because you're allowed to step outside the zoning a little bit and say, well, in this case, in special use, we want to deal with, shielding from lighting or shielding from sound or whatever the cases may be. And I think the Planning Commission unanimously pretty much supported the fact that there were no special conditions that were required for this. And largely that's because there's commercial property abutting essentially on all sides of that.
And you also not only looked at the 10 criteria, you also looked at the filling station criteria as
Correct.
well. And so the Planning Commission went ahead and did approve this. I think it's a really good project. I think, hopefully this is going to get, kickstart some other development along that stretch there. And, in some ways, it's an underserviced area, that whole route there. We're also talking about sidewalks, so I'm thinking right away, maybe some sidewalks over there as well. I think it's a very good project for that, and I think they're thinking ahead on this. I mean, with the convenience store, the Dunkin' Donuts. I like Dunkin' Donuts coffee. So I see a lot of positives with this. And again, the fact that the Planning Commission has approved it, we'll probably have to go through the criteria as well, for ourselves, just to verify. But I think, again, it certainly conforms with what exists there currently. And I think hopefully it's going to get some more development coming in that direction there. So, yeah.
Hopefully get some traffic flow coming from that direction.
Yes.
From, east to west along Bluegrass is what I'm hoping is that, I think that, when you look at that far east side of Bluegrass and, you just don't get the traffic flow that they need. And I think that increasing the traffic flow, hopefully, this will be part of it, right? That there's
Yes.
something actually down this direction.
Yeah.
That will help everybody on that strip, I think. All right.
One other comment too. Probably the one question that the applicant answered, but I don't want to say nebulous, but wasn't really sure, which is time of operation. And I can say that they did say they would be open early for coffee for you, Norm. But I had asked that question in concern because the Jamestown apartments are across the street, and I wasn't quite sure what kind of traffic time patterns we're going to have there at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. And I don't know. Can we? I've not been here in a while. Can I ask the applicant's question in this case, this public hearing, or no?
This is not a public hearing, but I think your question would be directed
To the chair? And I don't know if that's been, what's that?
Is it going to be a productive question?
Well, I think so. Well, I'm just curious if that process is evolved and whether or not those hours of operation have been nailed down at all.
Hey, I'm happy to answer that.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Rich Jaskowski. I met some of you the last time I was here. And it somewhat is driven by how well the business is. That there are Dunkin' Donuts and gas stations that are open 24 hours. Initially, we don't foresee that as a possibility here, but if the business did get busy enough that, you know, there was a market to keep it open, that is something, you know, that we would look at. And I'm not trying to be evasive with our answers, but most Dunkin' Donuts are not open 24 hours just because it's not cost effective to do that. Some gas stations are, and it's certainly possible you could even have a situation where maybe the gas station portion would be open, the Dunkin' part might be closed other than, you know, available donuts that were previously made. So it's hard for us to answer all of that, but generally the hours, you know, somebody would be arriving there around 4 a.m. to start making the donuts, like the old commercial, and it would be open, and then usually around 10 o'clock, the donut operations would shut down, and for the most part, usually gas stations would as well, again, unless there was, you know, a market to keep it going.
Hopefully there's a market to keep it going.
That's our hope, and we agree with all of you. We think that is currently an underserviced area, and the traffic counts seem to be getting better, and so we're excited about the
Yeah, I
opportunity.
hope you have to keep open 24
There's
hours.
a lot of traffic at 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
A lot.
And
Yes, Mr. Lyon.
Yeah, another question in regards to that project, if anybody knows. Interested in, not real clear if there's the potential for a fast food restaurant in addition to the sundries that are sold at the gas station and the Dunkin' Donuts. In my reading, it seemed that there is talk of, there's actually going to be another food establishment.
Mind if I answer that one?
Sure.
Yeah, we had kicked around that idea, and in fact, some of the preliminary, we haven't submitted our site plan. Our plan is to come back in the November meeting to do that. And one of the drawings we had did actually allow for a second fast food franchise, and our thought was we may be interested in leasing it to another fast food entity that wanted to come there. We're kicking around some ideas, and one of the difficulties with that is your drive-through traffic has to kind of cross over each other when you have two drive-through windows. So we're starting to shy away a little bit with that idea of having a second business there. And kind of the current plan, if you put us on the spot and said, if you're going to build it today, what would it be? We're looking at just doing the Dunkin' with the convenience store and gas station, but not the second fast food franchise, just because of some of the logistical issues with the traffic patterns through there around the drive-through.
Are we looking at curb cut access on both Broomfield and Isabella Road to this establishment?
What I saw in the plans that we had, and they're preliminary because they're waiting to do the final site plan based on approval of the SUP, is that they had discussions with the road commission, and there was curb cuts on both Isabella and Broomfield, excuse me. And I was a little surprised that the road commission was approving as close to the intersection as they were, but they're certainly there. And we also had discussions about interconnectivity between other properties. You know, it's designed to allow for that. At least the preliminary site plan is designed to allow cross-traffic to the south. And there, you know, there's nothing currently to the west that would be newly developed, right? It's the collision place?
Correct. And I didn't.
Does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
why would that concern you? Just thinking traffic might cut across there to
Well, one of the things the
bypass
planning
the
commission
corner?
is looking at imposing in the new zoning ordinance is that connectivity between commercial properties to keep traffic off of thoroughfares. And so, although it's not required, we wanted to at least bring it up that this is something that we'd like to see if it works for them to be able to do that.
And we would be interested in that as well, because I think the more opportunities you have for people to get to your establishment, you know, the better for everybody.
Right.
But the connectivity is also in our master plan, you know,
Yes,
that's being promoted
right.
as well.
Yeah.
you know,
Hence
wherever you can
that
do
being put in the zoning, right.
Yes, right.
Originally, as part of that Bluegrass project, there's a reason why it has that crazy road behind Goodwill.
Yeah, exactly.
And It's
Yeah,
supposed to be
yeah.
ones with that.
And as far as you know, this would include sidewalks?
Yes.
Along the
Yes.
perimeters of that?
Yep.
Great.
And we did have some discussions, and I don't remember, maybe you do, Lisa, regarding potential crosswalk there because of the pedestrian traffic that may be coming from the east, right? And I don't know what the road commission has said on that at all.
Yeah, I know our engineer has reached out to the road commission, but I'm not sure what the status is of
Yeah.
those discussions.
That's not
That was
included.
actually part of the project
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
Right.
I would
supposed to
assume
have
that
done
that
this
would be,
year.
yeah.
And it seems that some of the.
Which I didn't know about at the time when we, yeah, this is the
We
planning
started
commission.
to talk on that when you were, your last board, I think, started that whole project.
And some of the concerns regarding the hours and all that, I guess, you know, you're going to be talking, I guess, down shielding, with the lighting, and maybe some type of screening as a buffer from maybe from the apartments. So there are ways maybe to eliminate some of the noise or the light glare going over there, you know.
Those apartments are quite a ways away.
Yeah, there's still
Yeah,
set back
just,
a ways.
just to be
Yeah.
clear though, the planning
Yeah.
commission felt there was no need for additional screening, because if it were to be requested, it would have had to been done at the
Okay.
SUP.
Mhm.
And we didn't feel the need.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Actually, that corner, that's 6, 7, almost 7 acres, but then you look at where the apartments are, Jamestown, they're set further down, further south and set back, so I don't really see that as being a
And
big
it's,
issue.
yeah, right, and it's B4, B5 across the street, B4, B5
Correct.
to the west,
Right.
and to the south it's actually a retention basin, I think, is it not? But it's also zone B4, B5,
Look for the stormwater for,
the apartments, right?
or, yeah, Copper Beach or what, and what Copper Beach bought, but that apartment complex, the apartment complex, that's their stormwater,
Okay.
part of the retention.
Yes, for me personally, I felt the same way. This is a great project, and I don't always feel that way about SUPs, and this one, I'm like, no, this is good
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And the only reason it is an SUP is because it's a gas station, right?
Right, right.
have
So
to
we
go
need to
through
go
our
through these.
Right, go over our
Yeah.
10.
All right. It's always such a joy going through this list. So the way we do it in this board, Brian, is I don't ask for a consensus. I go individually.
Okay.
Okay?
I would just ask.
Thank you for that.
Yes. All right. So, general requirements for special uses. The applicant shall follow these requirements and recommendations made by the planning commission after they review the general requirements for all special uses are as follows. Number 1, the special use shall be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained in a manner harmonious with the character of the adjacent property and the surrounding area. We'll start with Kim.
Yes.
Bill.
It is.
Brian.
It is.
Kim.
Yes.
Norm.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, it is. 2, special use shall not change the essential character of the surrounding area. Start around the table again, starting with Kim.
Yes.
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 Yes, it conforms with the multi-development that's been allotted for that area, you know, so, yes.
Yes.
If it changes it for the better, so yes. The special use shall not interfere with the general enjoyment of the adjacent property. Start with Kim again.
I do not feel it will interfere. So, yes.
It will not interfere with adjacent property.
Agreed.
Agree.
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 Agreed. The special use should not be hazardous to adjacent property or involve uses, activities, materials, or equipment that would be detrimental to health, safety, and welfare of persons or property through the excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, odor, fumes, or glare. Kim?
Yes, it shall not.
It will not.
No issue here?
It should work well.
Yeah, I agree. And again, there's licenses and regulations for the filling station that they're going to have to adhere to. So that, I think that eliminates this as a problem.
Agreed.
Considering the adjacent property, then I agree that would be not an issue. 5, the special use shall be adequately served by essential public facilities and services, or shall be demonstrated that the person responsible for the proposed special use shall be able to continually provide adequate services and facilities deemed essential to the special use under consideration. The said facilities or services shall be approved by the Central Michigan District Health Department.
Absolutely.
Yes.
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 Yes. When deemed necessary by the Township Board or Planning Commission, this use shall be adequately screened by distance and landscaping to protect the rights of all adjoining property.
This was already in front of the planning commission. They didn't see any need for any more, so yes.
It conforms.
I see no need for additional screening.
I'll concur with the planning commission.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we trust our planning commission, yes. The Township Board or Planning Commission, in conjunction with approval of any application, may require a reasonable undertaking by the applicant to guarantee and assure by agreement, including the performance bond, to be posted by the applicant or by some other reasonable surety arrangement at appropriate stages of the plan development, that the development will be executed in accordance with the approved plan.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm assuming they'll follow the plan.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. That such use will be an asset to the township.
Yes. Norm already likes his coffee.
Definitely.
I haven't tried the coffee yet, but I would think it would be an asset.
I think it'll be an asset as long as we don't get into any like dark store situations, tax tribunal concerns that really you need to think about these days. But yes.
I say yes, also, like I said earlier, I think it's going to be a nice kickstart for other development there. And besides the coffee, the donuts are good too. So just wanted to add that.
Norm, do you have a conflict of interest?
I think he likes breakfast.
Just a side piece of coffee, we're good.
I think will be an asset to the township simply from the fact that it's going to be driving more traffic and maybe opening more areas to development. So I think that that's going to be a big bonus, so yes. Requirements and conditions of each individual special use shall be complied with unless otherwise mentioned within this section.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Any special use permit may be revoked by the Union Township Board upon recommendation of the Union Township Planning Commission whenever the operation fails to comply with any of the required conditions or may be subject to the penalties of this ordinance. A, approval of a special use shall be valid regardless of change of ownership, provided that all terms and conditions of the permit are met by any subsequent owner. And B, in instances where development authorized by special use permit has not commenced within 1 year from the date of issuance, the permit may be reconsidered and or voided at a regularly called meeting of the Planning Commission.
Correct.
Yes.
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 Yes, that's part of our zoning ordinance.
Yes.
And yes. And finally, filling stations for the sale of gasoline, oil, minor accessories, and other incidental service provided. 1, they are located in Ag B4, B5, B6, or B7 districts.
Yes.
It is.
It is.
Both B4 and B5, if I remember right.
Yes,
Yep.
that's true.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
The curb cuts for access to filling stations shall not be permitted at such locations that will tend to create traffic hazards in the streets immediately adjacent thereto. Entrances shall be no less than 25 feet from a street intersection measured from road right of way or from adjacent residential districts.
Correct.
I'm trusting that the road commission has already looked at that.
Right.
And I'm trusting the site plan will reflect that as well when it's
Absolutely.
put before the planning commission.
Yes.
Yes, road commission and site plan.
You're on top of that, right, Lisa?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Yes. The minimum lot area shall be 15,000 square feet and so arranged that ample space is available for motor vehicles that are required to wait, filling stations that are intended solely for the sale of gasoline, oil, and minor accessories, having no facilities for repair or servicing of automobiles, including lubricating facilities, may be permitted on lots meeting the minimum lot requirements of the district they are located in.
Yes.
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 Yes. 4, no principal or accessory building shall be closer than 50 feet from any abutting residentially zoned boundary line or in any event within 100 feet of any existing residential dwellings located on the abutting property.
That is correct.
There's no dwellings close to it.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Support it.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, no buildings. 5, driveways and parking areas as specified in section 30.4.B.2, which is the next page. Where we got 30 point, what's 30?
I'm sure it's covered.
B dot 2.
So 30 point,
Ordinances.
so 30.4, 30.4B,
Two.
B2.
3.4B2, it just states all entrances and exits shall be designed in accordance with the Isabella
Yeah.
County Road Commission's requirements.
Okay. Should just put that on there then.
Thanks for shortening that up, Pete.
Morse code. Okay, what does that mean? So, yeah.
Yes.
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 Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And then do we need to have with a food attached to this? Should there be another set of requirements for food establishments?
No, there's number
Don't forget
6 on the
six.
next
There's a
page.
6, go to the next
Oh,
page.
next page,
All
okay.
lighting
It's
shall
a-
be shielded from
Ah,
adjacent
okay,
districts.
all lighting should be shielded from adjacent districts.
Correct.
There are no other districts. Yes, it does.
I'm sorry, yes.
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 Sorry, I distracted.
Yeah.
In all candor, should we be having another requirements, and those requirements for food establishments?
It's allowed by right.
It's zoned by that,
Not
yeah,
need a
it's zoned by
special
that.
use.
Okay.
So they,
That's right, 'cause this is B4.
right, so
Right.
they could actually add that secondary
Okay.
fast food if they wanted, by right.
This is just for the filling stations, special
Right.
use.
Yep.
And
So this has to be a roll call, correct?
yes.
Okay.
Supervisor Gunning,
Yes.
Treasurer Rice,
Yes.
Trustee Hauk,
Yes.
Trustee
Yes.
Milky, Trustee Lanning,
Yes.
Trustee Worley.
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
All right, special use approved.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What day can Norm get his first donut?
Yeah,
We'll get it open as soon as we
I was gonna say, you've already got one customer.
Every day.
Thanks for coming to our community.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to it. Thank you much.
It's a good project, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is going to be a discussion item. And this would be item B on the 2% grant applications.
Oh.
I'm
Norm,
sorry.
this is your topic, right? You
Yeah.
start this baby off.
Okay.
Sign.
All right. Everyone has the sheet in front of them, and I'm going to go over this. One of the problems that we as a board have been having is that, we're waiting too late in the cycle to come up with projects because we have to look at things, in terms of, cost effectiveness, feasibility, engineering, see if there's other collaborative organizations that want to be with us. So we're waiting too long. So I think bringing it up now is a way for us to start thinking about what we might doing for the spring 2020. So that would be coming up at the end of, I believe, the end of March would be when that would be, the application would be due. And then it would probably be April or, I think, like April, early May, where we then have the distribution made. So I'm going to jump around on this a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to start with in talking to the tribe, what they had seen as the priorities that they liked. So looking at number 1 and 2, the Broadway Isabella intersection, left turn signals and lane, similar to the projects at other intersections on Isabella for the safety and improvement and collaborative project with the Road Commission. I know this is on the docket somewhere down, but being that it's now, that we're doing everything else from Bluegrass all the way down to Pickert, you know, this might be the time to try to get this on the docket and have everything done at once. And the other is to have speed zones and safety lights by Mary McGuire and Renaissance Schools, especially during the school hours, and particularly during arrivals and departures from the school. Those together were the highest priority in terms of the tribe. I talked to members of the tribal council. Renaissance School principal was real in favor of this. So that's one that we might want to consider because it's being requested, and I think there'd be a lot of collaboration for that. We're already doing that whole stretch going down Isabella with the other intersections, and it makes sense to me if we can get the timing right to just coordinate it all together. So that'd be that'd be the first one. The second that had high interest as well would be two of them. It would be the interlocal pathway connector, Area A on Deerfield Road to Denison for the non-motorized pathway. And again, that'd be a collaborative project with CMU, the city, and perhaps others. And also I spoke with them regarding a pathway and a bridge connecting O'Connor and McDonald subdivisions, and there was a lot of interest in that. There's many tribal members living in both those subdivisions, and that we'd have to though, but they said we'd have to coordinate that also with the pathway folks. So if they'd be interested in, you know, pushing for that, that was the one that received the next amount of interest, other than the first two that I mentioned. The third was of interest was Crawford Road, again between Broomfield and Deerfield, perhaps widening of the shoulders, decrease the speed limit to 45, a collaborative project against CMU, Road Commission, City, and others. And also, I brought up again, this is something you had mentioned way back when, Ben, in our first one, Meridian Road. And at that time, there wasn't the interest because, you know, they're looking at things both in terms of access and use, particularly by the tribe. So when you talk about Meridian Road, it's way out there. But again, if that was a collaborative project that we were going to be doing along with Deerfield Township, there'd be interest. The main thing that they would want is that the Road Commission sees the need and the necessity for those two projects. And if the Road Commission is something that they're on board with it, then I believe that the tribe would also be interested in it as well, as for the 2%. And then the other one was the sidewalk and a pathway going down Harris/Crawford Road. So this is go from River down to Pickert Road, preferably the east side. Now this is already part of the pathway plan for phase 4. So opposite this, on the other side, you have the tribal lands, and you also have the historic Indian boarding school buildings that they're, you know, trying to now renovate and to keep that as a designated site and as sacred lands. And it would then, what we're talking about is go from Deer Run subdivision all the way down that stretch. So you'd have, so to go along that subdivision on the side on Harrison and Crawford, going past Hannah Dog Park. Then there's a little park there after that, I believe. And then we have a long stretch of land that is we have access to for the Coyne property. So that's already been set aside. They would be interested in that if the pathway folks would want to speed that up. So although it would be kind of broken up in terms of how we're doing the pathways, I see this as a really great project because, one, there was a lot of interest expressed in Deer Run subdivision. I think the tribe liked it, the fact that, you know, you get pedestrian traffic coming down on that side and going over to the boarding school and to their property there. So those are the ones that were that were highly promoted. Also,
Norm, I
Yeah,
think you're
I'm-
actually meaning to say Fox Meadow
oh, Fox
as
Meadow.
opposed to Deer Run.
Yeah, yeah, Fox Meadow, you're right, thank you, yeah. So those are the main projects that I had presented the most recently. There was also, if in the future there's any continued collaboration with surrounding municipalities and the tribe in monitoring and ensuring a clean and unpolluted Chippewa River, that would be something fundable, and I think that's something we should look into. For us all to continue to protect our natural environment and preservation of our farmlands through zoning and enforcement might be things, again, areas that we might just say we're going to keep as natural land. That may also be something that we could do, maybe you're buying the land or a grant or whatever it might be. That was basically it. So what I'd like to suggest is that, as a board, is that, these are projects that are definitely fundable. But, we need to have, like I said, the feasibility, the engineering, the cost estimates, collaboration, look at this in terms of our budget as we're doing that now. So we can get all that on board in advance. Then we can start submitting. I know this last cycle, it just seemed that we just had a few things to submit, but we wanted to keep the cycle going rather than having nothing or submitting nothing. And they fit too in terms of safety, and the tribes that they were interested in those projects too. But I think we need to get a little bit more proactive on this. I think we're waiting too long before we do anything. So the sooner we can begin to decide what we want to do, then maybe direct Mark and management to then begin to get the numbers and the estimates that we need, and then we can vote on that, and then I can bring that back to the tribe, and we can certainly submit that in March.
One question for you, is there
Yeah.
a reason why they just want to take that pathway to Fox Meadows and not take it all the way to Becker?
Oh, yeah.
River, right?
Yeah. You mean to go all the way to River?
River.
I said
Sorry,
River
yeah.
all the way to River to Bickford, yes.
So it doesn't go to, okay.
Yeah.
It seemed kind of weird.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, you got it.
All right. Any questions for
Yeah.
Yeah.
Norm on this? Yes.
One of the things that was brought up at the meeting, the Sidewalks and Pathways meeting on Monday night, in regards to Crawford Road, there was talk about seeing if there is a way to put a light, because we have sidewalks there by the apartments, and they're like, well, possibly putting like a pedestrian walking light kind of thing there, and a pathway that goes down behind Crawford to connect to Denison, or down behind Concourse that connects to Denison, and that way people can walk down the one side, but cross safely across the road at a light or something there. Is that something that would even be possible, or even?
That's a good
You know.
suggestion, because, when you drive there at night, it's dark, and even with your lights on, I mean, I don't see how anyone would go over 40 or 45, especially at night, because, and then all of a sudden, you see some people walking on the side of the road, it really jumps out at you. So lighting would be a good idea. And yet you have what is that, the West Point, East Point, what's those apartments across the street from?
Those are the same.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a sidewalk there.
Yeah.
Right. So again, we're talking about collaborative projects.
Yeah.
It isn't
Right.
that we'd be doing this necessarily on our own. But that might be an idea too.
Just pedestrian light there, so that people would actually have to stop when pedestrians are crossing the road to get
Mhm.
to a possible
Would that be
sidewalk.
hard with that speed limit through there?
But-
That road is obviously a problem, because
Mhm.
you've got so many obstacles. You've got those giant trees, you've
Yep.
got
Ditches that
incredibly
are-
deep ditches, you've got houses. that are
Houses
almost
close
sitting
to the
on top
road,
of the
yeah.
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 I mean, realistically at that, you're looking at, you can't throw, Band-Aids at that road. At some point in time, and I would like to see this intergovernmental group that we had together. But I think that we need to, bring in, some university administration. I don't know if we necessarily need to have the county involved on this as far as, I see this as a Mount Pleasant, Union Township, and a CMU thing. But for everybody's sake, it needs to be discussed. And we keep saying, well, gosh, do this, do this, do this. But it doesn't really solve the problem.
Right.
The problem is that that road is just going to be a huge expense
Yeah.
to do it adequately, right?
I think that if we were going to put a sidewalk all the way up there, weren't we talking like $600,000, $700,000 to, I mean, some outrageous
And
figure.
that's old.
It was-
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the old one,
That's
yeah.
probably
And,
four or
and
5 year old.
getting easements in some of those spots will be tough.
Yeah.
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 You got all those doggone trees. I
Yeah.
The
mean,
county's gotta be involved, the road commission's gotta be involved, it's
Well, I
their
think
road.
not so much the
I think
road
widening the
commission,
road
yes,
is the
I'm
best
saying
option.
the county
Oh,
administration
yeah.
doesn't necessarily be, this is something I think that we need to bring CMU in because they have ownership on that road.
So
Right.
in the past, when I met with the road commission on this, they were very open to using their right-of-way for sidewalks, and, I mean, we did some preliminary engineering on that, right? So, that's where that 600,000 came from, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, getting buy-in from all parties was
You have to
tough.
talk about it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
At some point in time, we have to say, hey, let's talk about
Yeah,
this.
I mean,
Let's
it's-
sit down.
That-
There are some new
that road-
faces in those parties, where there was reluctance in the past.
I like all these ideas. I think
That
they're great.
road was sufficient as a farm road. I mean, it was a country road, and that's what, and now you're getting, lots of traffic volume going through.
High-density housing.
Duplexes and
Right.
apartments.
Yeah. So, if you could, maybe the is to at least maybe if you could widen it to the extent that you can, and at least maybe have the shoulders, at least there's a little bit of area for people to get off to. But you have to decrease the speed. And that's one of the things in the master plan too, where vehicular and pedestrian traffic collide, is that what you end up doing is either slowing down the speed or widening the roads. I think there's something like that mentioned in our master plan. So in this case, I'm not sure how much widening you can do, maybe, I mean, we're really limited,
Yeah.
but it really has to be done because
Goes in the
yeah,
ditches, put in storm sewer.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's one of these things that it sounds great when you write it down.
Yep.
But in reality, this is a 10-year.
Well, the state's gotta be involved in it too,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
the state police regulate
Right.
speed limits.
Right,
Exactly.
right. So you can look at all
got a lot of
these,
different entities, Ben, like you said.
Yeah.
you can look at all these projects and, and as again, I tried to prioritize in terms of what I saw the interests being, So we have some ideas here and I don't know, if we want to have at the next meeting, the meeting after, at some point maybe to have some voting on this and decide what we want to do, give Mark some directives and get the information. So we can move ahead. So we have some, and we can do more than one thing here. You can submit
Right.
2-3 projects, and if you don't get them that cycle, it might be picked up another cycle. So you don't have to be limited in terms of what you submit.
I would like to, right along with the Crawford Road thing, is the interlocal pathway connector. I don't see that there's, that whole next segment is so contrived and ill-conceived. I just don't see how it's possible for us to go to an entity and ask for anything on it, because they had the pathway going along the side of that CMU RC building, where there's egress doors and people walking to their cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no safe method in place for students to actually cross the street. You've got people going 55 to 60 miles an hour on that road. So, I mean, it's going to require a crosswalk, realistically, a reduction in speed limit. And to be frank with you, with Area B, I have a big problem with the fact that we're putting $210,000 into something that the city's only putting 20 into. It doesn't even touch our borders. I mean, in front of the baseball stadium, there's already bike lanes. So why are we funding $210,000 on a project that doesn't even touch our borders.
But, we're not funding the full 210, because some of that's also 2% money, just,
Yeah, but
I'm
we're
not
only
sure what
putting
the
in
split
20.
is here.
And
you
so
know.
if they want to match us 60/60, either that or we take our 60 and we drop it to 20. But then here's the other problem, is you guys had those project costs done when you were on the board.
Right?
And so these are old
Oh, yeah, they're all numbers, yeah. Yeah.
And so I have a real problem personally with the idea of presenting that as even close to being a finished project where we can say, hey, we'd like some money with that.
And the only reason that project existed at that time, it was the alternative to dealing with the Crawford Road issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was, well, we can't do that because of the costs, so this is an alternative, and, you know, my personal feelings was this does not address the issue.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that there's some feeling on the opposite, our funding partner within the city limits that has the same thought process, and that's the reason why we're willing to only go 20. But I think that I mean, in concept, it would be wonderful, but in practicality, what I've seen thrown together, that section A is, there's no way in the world it's gonna happen like it's written. I liked a lot of these other things personally. I like the two projects, 1 and 2, and the safety.
Yeah,
I think those are home runs.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I remember when I talked with Pat Gaffney probably 3 years ago, and we were talking about M20 Pickard, and that the road commission, or not the road commission, but MDOT was going to completely redo that road. Remember how they ground off the top layer of asphalt, and everybody was going, you know, waiting for the next thing to happen, and it never happened. But actually, it's a pretty good road now, because it's all the ruts have been worn down. But, so next year is when MDOT's going through and reconstructing that. And from what I understood, is that the reason why the Broadway Isabella interchange was not in that original safety grant that we had funded was because they were waiting for MDOT to do this project. And so there's already engineering done on that intersection. So it would be, I think, very easy for us to come up with a really good realistic number.
There was a high interest in that
Yeah.
1 and 2, and I think those would be great
Well,
projects.
benefits, huh?
And then you get safety going all the way down from Bluegrass all the way down to Pickard.
And the
I think
safety on that road has been discussion at this board and the
road
planning commission
traffic
for a
flow.
decade now,
Yeah.
Just to work
ever
on
since
our
it was
time,
expanded.
Do we all agree that 1, 2, and 3 are the best for them to go forward on that, or no?
I definitely agree on 1 and 2.
Because we still have like 4
Yeah,
things left on our agenda.
yeah,
I'm sorry, but.
No,
But-
that's-
yeah.
So what you want from us is to make some decisions in the near
Yeah,
future.
but it doesn't have to be tonight. I just wanted
This
to
is
throw
for
it out.
spring.
Yeah,
Right.
but this would be
Yeah.
for spring, but, you know.
You gotta fund it.
We need
Definitely
to
good
fund it, and we
ideas,
need
yes.
to also get all the engineering,
Right,
things like
right.
that, so we have everything in place. And then that way, we're putting forth projects that are for the residents, and they're good projects for the community.
And you know, one other thing that I would discuss with them too, that's not on here, is the north side of the bridge on Lincoln.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that benefits everybody, you know, to get that thing done.
So from the bridge to 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if I'm them, I understand 1 and 2 a lot better perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
No question.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
All right,
okay.
move on to our next item. This is going to be C. This is discussion, policy governance 2.1, communications and support to the board.
Thank you, get caught up here. The policy 2.10, this is the time of year where the board reviews whether or not the manager is compliant with this policy. The policy states that the manager shall not permit the board to be uninformed or unsupported in its work. There are 8 or 9 subsections to that, that I won't read each one. They're in your packet. I will indicate or suggest that my interpretation of this policy means that the board shall be made aware of any material information that would impact the policy-making role of the board, that I'm to gather and present relevant information to the board to assist in the policy-making role of the board, and that I shall prepare and submit monitoring reports when they're due per the schedule. On page 81 of your packet, I've listed data that I think is relevant to whether or not the manager is compliant with the policy. I won't go into all those. You have had a chance to read them already. But based on that data that I think does support the interpretation that I feel is reasonable, then at least from my perspective, the data suggests that there is compliance with the policy. And the rest of this is for your discussion.
I'm not sure I'm in a place where I can judge properly. I have no history here.
Well, from my position in reviewing this 2.10 communication in support of the board, it's been stated that we're overwhelmed and inundated with information at times. I would have to agree that there's not really any times that come to mind necessarily that we were not kept abreast, informed, highlighted if there was something negative that we may need to be aware of. I do know that Mark has apologized at a time for missing to bring us something forward, but you know, I'd say from my perspective, Mark's been hitting a home run as far as meeting the criteria and identifying how he has kept us abreast.
Yeah, and if he's ever missed one, you know, he makes sure to update us. You know, if we ask for an update, he gets us the information. So.
I feel that the information, I think Mark always presents things in a very clear, direct, and a concise manner. It's always informative. There's always good follow-up. You know, and, you know, we're all human. There's been some things that, you know, either the timing wasn't right or delaying getting us information, but, you know, we mentioned those concerns and, you know, he responds to it. So I feel also that Mark's been very supportive of us as a board. And I know, you know, you can call him individually if you're stuck on an issue, and you know, he provides the information or guidance or suggestions, and I really appreciate that as well. So.
I'm gonna say, I mean, there's a few times that, yes, we have had some, you know, where it's not right there, but then if we ask for it, we get it. But, so, I put needs a little improvement. That's what I put.
I agree, there's been a couple times, in my opinion, there's been a couple legal matters that I wish we would have been informed on a little sooner, but he's apologized for that and explained it, so I feel better now.
Oh, I had a question on that. I'll just ask him later. It's easier that way.
Good? All right, let's move to the next item. This is Board of Trustees annual review of Board Governance Policy 4.0 Global Governance Management Connection.
You find this on page 83 of your agenda packet. This is in the section of the policies where it's really about the board itself reviewing its adherence to the policy. And 4.1 at its highest level, and again, there are some subsections and some subparagraphs, but it indicates that the board's primary connection to the operational organization, its achievement and conduct, will be through the chief executive officer, titled the manager. It does have some clarifiers in there to account for the fact that there are members of this board that have some operational considerations that need to be made and authorities within the statute. And so this is, again, this is not an issue of you all want monitoring whether or not I've achieved the policies, whether or not you all have adhered to your own policy.
We have.
So as I looked at this, they're both very short in our policy manual. You know, what's in front of us is pretty much what it says in the policy manual. And on 4.0, what came to my mind that I would like to throw out for us to start looking at and maybe learning the pros and cons about is actually the term where it says titled Township Manager. And if you look at what is expected of a township manager in your little red book of the 2008 updated edition, versus what we could actually title Mark as superintendent, which was previously the designated title for the position, back in 2008 anyways. I think that reflects much more accurately as to the responsibilities that Mark handles here at the township. So I would throw that out to the board to
Look it up.
refer to their book, look at page 158, look more specifically even at page 32 and 33. And I would like to bring this up after some review by the board to have it as an agenda item, preferably before the end of the year, if that would make sense.
You are
to have
correct in
discussion.
terms of how that, I've read that as well, and they refer, their designation is supervisor and then superintendent, and the superintendent refers to the manager. And as you're talking about a managerial form of government and the responsibilities that have been given to Mark based on policy governance, is why you see that as being a more clear, role, or more title, I should say, more clear title than just manager.
It represents what his
What it actually does.
expected responsibilities are currently.
Yes.
as he
In statute.
operates.
And by statute, it changes things dramatically, because when you're talking superintendent, you're talking manager, you got the superintendent, there's a residency requirement, number one. Manager, there's not. Superintendent has a list of A through O duties that are bestowed upon them. A manager has none of those duties until there's a written agreement by the elected official, by statute. So going by manager and operating in the manner that we are with governance, this governance that we use, the policy and governance, it doesn't conjoin. If we're going to be operating under policy governance, then the manager needs to be a superintendent. Period, exclamation point. Because that's the only way it works. You know, otherwise, when you're talking manager, you know, you've got that list of A through O. Those are all by law given to the supervisor. If that person is not the superintendent.
But also the
So-
job, if you go by both the job description of the manager, the contract that we have with the manager, and policy governance, does really bestow those particular items.
But it needs to be clear. It needs to be
Yeah.
in the governance language. It can't be manager. It's got to be superintendent, because in statute, there's a clear difference between the superintendent and the manager.
So what I'm
That
hearing you say,
creates
Ben,
huge confusion.
you're agreeing that that would be appropriate?
I think it needs to be done, because from my standpoint, I've been confused ever since I walked in this building.
There is a notation.
Because you look at, there's such a clear thing, and if you go to Webster's dictionary and you look at superintendent, it's a synonym for manager. And so manager, superintendent, and it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but then if you go into the Charter Township Act, and I actually happen to have it right here, and there's a list of A through O, and by statute, if Mark is a manager, then what should have happened is, right after the election, is we should have had a sit down and we should have gone through A through O. And that would have been to Hoyle. And that's the way that the whole thing is supposed to work. But he's operating as a superintendent, but yet, I remember asking the question, when are you gonna move into the township? I don't have to, because I'm a manager, I'm not a superintendent, so I don't have to.
So I think our policy governance gave those responsibilities to Mark. As far as residential requirements, 2/3 of the vote could waive that requirement of living in the township. If Mark's not in the township, he's probably a half a stone's throw away from the township.
I
So
like
it's
the
not really-
designation manager/superintendent, because I think that encompasses, how we've done policy governance. It encompasses what Ben's suggesting too, in terms of the statutory responsibilities. So, or you can just call it superintendent, but I guess I've looked at Mark as being the manager/superintendent.
So just for clarity though, that's the problem, is that whoever is sitting in the seat, whether me or somebody else, is that there should be clarity. When you get done with the election, you should have clarity, this is the role, and there's never been clarity in that role, because of the use of, it's like the management team. You go in and here we are muddling around for 2.5 years, and all of a sudden, I discover there's an appendix with item C that says, well, holy crap, I'm in the management team.
Have you ever had a meeting?
Yeah, nobody, I've asked that question repeatedly, and I always got shot down. It turns out I'm actually in it. And, I think the way the thing reads, it would be very easy for somebody to walk in and say, management team, well, that's me and so-and-so. But in reality, this thing, like Sue Radwin had talked about, is this all had to work within the confines of state statute. And so if we're gonna operate within the confines of state statute, let's start using state statute terms.
Right. And so it seems to me that if we're all in agreement that changing the title to either manager/superintendent or just plain superintendent,
I just think, I want to read it first.
Pardon?
Yeah, I
I'd
would
like
like
to read it.
Yeah, no,
first.
I'm not,
I
I'm
mean,
not,
I've read it
I'm not,
before.
yeah, no.
Like, no, don't do
I
that.
have another.
Okay.
So, what I'm suggesting is that, what we probably need to do, because you're gonna have to change wording throughout the policy governance. You'd have to change wording in, I guess, in multiple areas. Maybe it'd be preferable for us to have this discussion with our lawyer as well, so that we get it done right, so that the superintendent's role is to be fulfilling the statutory requirements of what a superintendent does according to statute. And so we're all on the same page on this. And I'm not saying we have to decide that tonight, but I'm just thinking, I think what we should do is maybe have this go to legal. Maybe that's something that Mark can do, is maybe bring it to the lawyer, and maybe we can get some information regarding what are the changes we'd have to make in order to shore this up better. And maybe you know some of this already, so.
Well, you do want some legal guidance, and you want some considered thought on this before you make any change, because it's everything from your policy governance documents to the employment agreements you have with existing township managers. So, you know, to get it done, you probably have a lot of steps procedurally that you need to deal with, and then a lot of thought that goes in behind it, just to make sure there's no misunderstanding and add some clarity. The statute, and I've looked into this a lot, and I've had discussions with people that know what they're talking about. A manager / superintendent, you won't be able to do that via statute. You won't be able to find an attorney that allows that, because it's one or the other.
Yeah,
I
it
got
indicates
you.
you can't have.
I got
That's
you,
for one.
okay. That makes sense.
And then two, you do have a manager. And that's perfectly within your rights. You've done it. And you've articulated through the job description and your employment agreement with all your managers, you've assigned the responsibilities and the duties that you want that person to execute in those documents. So you've fulfilled section 42.10a. You've articulated those duties. So don't let anybody think, suggest that you have not. And then when you get to, if you want to start moving to the superintendent, it makes it a little easier. You got this A through N. You also have O, that's the catch-all to perform such other duties as may be prescribed by the act, by ordinance, or by the direction of the township board. So you could add a lot of other things to it. You don't have to confine yourself to A through N. So, I just don't want the public or anybody to be under the impression that the form of management and administration that the township has right now is anything but in comportment with the statute.
Section 10A, 42.10A, Township Manager Employment Service Duties. If the township has not appointed a township superintendent under section 10, the township board may employ a township manager who shall serve at the pleasure of the township board and perform such duties lawfully delegated to the manager by the township board. Those duties may include those that are delegated by law to another township official if written consent has been granted by that official. So
There's
that's
nothing
where
that's been delegated to me that's not,
A through O.
no, my
Well-
job description is what's been delegated, and there's nothing in that that is taking duties away from, say, your
Okay. I'm just saying
legal
that-
duties.
I'd like to inject here. I don't think this is the time, as a suggestion's been made by Tim, and I think, and we're all in agreement to that suggestion, and we can see it will provide more clarity, more definition of roles. It would just be, I think it may just make an easier functioning within the board as a whole.
Exactly.
So my suggestion is, rather than debating it now, let's just put it on reserve. But I believe that if everyone's in agreement, what I would suggest is that we have the lawyer begin to look at all this, what needs to all be changed, because it sounds like it's going to be from the job description to the contract to the policy governance. There's quite a few aspects of this, and this is beyond my pay scale in terms of what needs to be done here. But I believe it would give the clarity that you're asking for. It gives it stamps the statutory responsibilities and makes that all acceptable. It just brings everything together nicely. So if we're in agreement, why don't we just think about doing that with having the lawyer come and maybe we could have a work session, or maybe do, however we want to do that. How do people feel about that?
Well, I mean, let's do it after the first of the year now. We've got so many things
Yeah,
going
we
on,
can.
you
Yeah,
know? We've
yeah.
got
Yeah, yeah.
budgets to approve, we've got contracts we're gonna be talking about.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot.
But I think it needs to get cleaned up.
I agree.
Big time.
I agree. I think it'll make it easier for everyone.
Well, before the
In
next.
this, we talk about management team, and the management team being department heads. And so, as supervisor, my department would be the assessing department. And much like the clerk has her, as the head of the clerks. Record keeping, right, and elections. And the treasurer collects taxes, distributes monies, right, makes deposits. So within that, in 42.11A, Township Assessor's Appointment, Powers, Duties, and Compensation, Section 11A, in any charter township, in addition to the supervisor, the charter township board may provide for the appointment of assessors not exceeding 2 for such charter township. Such assessors, when appointed, shall be clothed with all the powers and duties of supervisors in assessment of property for taxation within such township, and shall receive for their services such compensation as may be allowed by the charter township board. Whenever assessors shall be appointed, as in this act provided, the supervisor shall be the chief assessing officer, and such assessors shall in all cases be subordinate to such supervisor. Upon completion of the assessment and making of the rolls, such rolls shall be deposited with the supervisor. So what this says is that I am the department head of the assessor talks to me. So when there are one-on-one meetings or two-on-one meetings involving the assessor, being the department head, is I should be involved in that meeting.
I interpreted it, the language I heard was subordinate to the supervisor. And I guess I'm curious as to the definition of that, because technically that's true, right? In that we oversee Mark, and Mark oversees staff.
Right.
So
The assessor is a statutory employee.
yeah, that can exist.
Yeah, it's a statutory employee, so what I was told by the legal counsel at MTA, when I asked that question, is that you are the department head. The assessor answers to you. So with that being the case, if there's going to be any meetings between the assessor and the administration, is that the supervisor, being the department head, should be in that meeting.
That's what it
Do we
says.
have a
No, no.
consensus?
I mean, if that's what it
I-
says,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what the
That's what
state
it says.
statute says.
If you can get to it.
Well, that's not exactly what it says.
No.
but
Yeah,
You gotta
because-
get into the definition of words.
I mean,
and all that.
I got
Right,
the
because the way I
definition right
interpreted
here,
it
but
was,
it's which one, are you
What-
using it
what-
as an
what you have
adjective or a
here
noun,
is-
that's the question.
I think it's imperative that, that this be done right and not
Yeah.
haphazard as this seems to be going right now. I'd say I'm going to say let's put an end to this conversation for now. And let's do this when we have some legal counsel, when we have more time for all of us to digest what's involved and how we want to make that distinction. But we're all on board in terms of wanting to designate the manager as the superintendent. So that being
Well,
the
that's one
case-
thing that road you went down, what the supervisor just brought up was the idea of him or any one of you attending the one-on-one meetings with staff that report to me per my job description, per my employment agreement. And Ben and I had that discussion in private once, not too long ago. He understands that, and you all do too, that the risk I see with the way the assessing office is functioning right now, and him and I talked about ways to try to address that, and you were going to do a couple things to try to alleviate that. And I don't know if you've done them yet or not, but I put them all out in email, so you're all aware of them. And what isn't going to happen is, unless there's, 4 you vote, that you're going to allow one of you to attend these staff meetings, whether they're staff meetings or one-on-one meetings. I'm sorry, but it's just not going to happen. And I explained that to you in our meeting. And that does not prevent you from meeting with the assessor. You can meet with the assessor all you want. But if I'm calling a meeting, I'm going to have the courtesy and the discretion to decide who attends that, unless you all vote 4-0 to make something different happen. And so that's what I'm going to say about that. You are, by statute, responsible for, you oversee the assessing function. Whether or not that means the assessor reports to you in terms of day-to-day activities is a different question. I am more than happy to turn the accountability for the assessing function over to the supervisor 100%, and then I will not be held accountable. I'll turn all the authority over, but I will not be held accountable for it. And then that's an option too for the board. But as been explained to you, along with another trustee in a private meeting, to the board recapping that meeting, is there some real risks that are going on in the assessing function. I'm interested in protecting the township from those risks. And right now, nothing's happening because we got this thing going on. And that's the worst place that the township can be in. Because I'm not going any further at any point in time that I feel comfortable with. And so in many respects, nothing's getting done. We talked about the assessing support position. We had one, that fell apart for various reasons that will happen again if we fill it. And so why go through that exercise? That's why I only budgeted for it 75% of the time. The assessment role was not delivered. These are big things to the March board review at the
Can we
time.
go to the next subject, please?
I think
And
we
we'll
should
talk about this later.
Closed session.
And so
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm
I don't
just
think
bringing
we're
all this
discussing-
up because somebody started going
I-
down a road
Yes.
of who, the board hires the assessor. You did that back in 2000 and whenever, 4
Supervisor
or
Gunning, you may
something.
continue. You may continue to the next subject.
The
Right.
board
Move
doesn't
on
even
to
have the
next
authority to
subject.
discharge
Let's
the
see.
assessor.
We're gonna go on to item E. This is Board of
Thank you.
Trustees
Mark,
annual
do you have
review,
anything
board
else to say on
governance
that?
policy
Yeah.
4.1.
Hold
No,
on,
thank
hold
you.
on, hold on. I don't like the way this is going. No.
sorry.
This
This
should
is
be
going
closed
really bad.
session if
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about this.
I had made a suggestion.
We're bringing up,
Okay, I made a
We're targeting
suggestion
specific
that we
individuals.
table this now, that we get legal counsel, that we go back to this issue in terms of dealing with this. I don't think it's right to be airing laundry in
Right.
public. I think that there's some discrimination that should be done here to protect employees, and I'm just not comfortable with where this is heading.
Totally.
It's the same, fire and brimstone that we've been dealing with for 3 years now. I just want to see it come to an end. And if changing the role of the manager to superintendent, that will resolve this issue, I'm 100% for it, because the last 3 years, with this type of turmoil that we've been having on this board, has just been an absolute, complete pain, to say the least. So I'm going to make a motion that we table this discussion that we direct Mark to, bring this to the attention of the lawyer and see what the options are in moving forward for the benefit of the township, for the benefit of the residents, and for the benefit of the board.
I just mentioned that we spoke about policy. We had a review on 2.1. Communication and support to the board. I feel that our township manager is keeping us abreast of a situation that we don't want to find ourselves in. So I appreciate you speaking out, Mark. And we will work on this situation to try to help everyone understand what's been clear over many, many managers here at the township.
I'll support Norm's motion.
All right. All in favor of tabling the discussion on item D?
I would add the other one in on it too.
Not really item D.
No, it was a separate motion.
What is that, tabling the discussion?
That we're tabling discussion, that we give Mark the authority to get legal counsel and to, for us to have this discussion at a further date. And I agree with you, Bill, it should probably be in closed session.
This is
May
going
I?
in so many different directions here that.
We do have to be careful, obviously, with closed session. It has,
Yeah.
there's very
Yes.
strict guidelines, and some of it may have to be done in open session, some of it may have to be done in closed, and, okay.
Yes.
Just-
And
And that's my hesitation when I heard the
Yes.
close. I'm like, if we're gonna be talking about in
We don't even
specific.
decide right now about the closed,
Okay.
it's just the fact that we're going to be
You won't have a
directing
closed
Mark.
session unless you're allowed to by law.
Right, that's what I'm
You know that,
referring
right?
to. Right.
That's
And there may be
a
parts of that discussion that,
given.
Postpone it.
okay.
Don't table it, postpone it.
So if we table this. let me
It's
just
going on the
say-
next meeting,
Okay,
so
if we postpone
postpone
it, we have discretion.
Let's just be done with it and do
Well, what
neither.
if the special meeting's like the next meeting? You know? Well, I guess it don't matter.
Well, once something's tabled, it doesn't come off till you take it off, someone takes it off the table.
It says it goes on the next meeting if you look
Yeah,
at
but
the,
you still have to take it off the table.
Yeah.
And if
Postpone it
that's
means
not done,
it's
then you-
indefinite.
oh, it just, yeah, gotcha.
Well, we should
You'd
table
have
it
to-
until
you'd
we
have to
get
change
ample
his motion.
opportunity.
Yeah,
to-
so I'd make a motion then that we postpone this discussion and have direct Mark to get legal opinion on all this, and then to see how we move forward from here.
One last, if I may.
Yes.
Mark, is this directive clear in what is being asked?
One piece is, you need some legal assistance with the transition, pros and cons of superintendent to manager. That's an item distinct in of itself. I think what Norm was trying to, or Trustee Worley was trying to manage here towards the end is a different issue. And that has to do with where authority and accountability lie vis-à-vis the assessing function.
Is that accurate from what your
Yes.
motion is? Okay, so,
And so I think you then are wanting some legal advice on that question, which may,
That's how I interpret
okay,
it.
I just want to make sure that
Which-
you felt like you had the
well,
direction
that's why
from
I'm
that
repeating
motion.
it,
Right,
to see
Yes.
if I do, and if that accords with what's going on in your mind.
because it'd be very easy not to be clear what was being asked of you, I think.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you encapsulated what I heard. I just want to make sure you felt clear in the direction.
Okay, so you all heard that as, okay.
Do you have a motion, Norm?
Yeah, you
Yes.
said it.
He
I just said it.
Postpone.
Yeah, to
And
postpone.
the two are kind
Conversation.
of not related.
Understood.
The
Right.
superintendent manager question is essentially unrelated to the other question.
Why would we postpone? We're just done.
Because
There's
they
no
still-
motion needed.
On a lighter note, Halloween's coming up.
Okay, so anyway,
Well-
what do you think, that we do that?
I know, but
But don't you think that we should have
We're
legal
just getting
counsel
into so
on
many
this
different things
to make
here
sure
that-
that we're doing it properly for
Um,
everyone's protection?
An emotion along those lines would be great,
That's what he just said,
but tabling something, I'm not clear.
for legal counsel, and then he's gonna bring it back
I
for
was
the conversation.
postponing this discussion because I think the discussion was getting out of hand, and I think it was starting to perhaps
Sure, sure.
expose some situation that I don't think is fair to an employee.
well, that's why I agree with you.
Yeah.
We're specifically targeting
So
an
the
employee.
specific motion is gonna be,
We gave him advice, he's gonna get legal counsel. I mean, you
Right.
don't have to have
Yeah,
exactly
On
word
the
for word
two-
what we're
On
saying.
the two issues, I'm assuming they could be discussed separately even
Yes.
if
Management,
need be,
legal.
at a later date.
Yes.
One's changing.
So we're not
manager
making a
to
motion to
superintendent.
postpone or table anything. We're making a
Not
motion
take-
to take an action.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
I believe your
You are
motion is
correct.
to direct me to do something.
Yeah, there you go.
Trying to
When I'm
understand.
done with doing that, then you'll be addressing the issue
Yes.
again.
Right. Yes.
All in favor?
Okay.
So the motion, as I understood it, is for Mark to connect with legal counsel to help talk about the assessor role and responsibility of our manager and supervisor.
Correct. But
As well
also,
as,
as well as to
Change
help
the role
us change
from
the role of
manager to
manager,
superintendent.
changing the title of the manager to superintendent. So there's clarity for all. So it's twofold. One is to change the title.
So we got two motions going.
No, just one, to seek
Two
legal
actions
counsel
in
for
one
the two
motion.
things.
Right, this is.
Yeah.
Talking to legal counsel about these two issues.
Yeah,
Okay.
Is that okay?
If it's good with you guys, I can
Okay.
handle it, but it
Okay.
seems a little,
Well, the two motions, I mean,
Fine.
one is a change, he's going to talk to legal counsel both about the title, but that title also carries over in terms of the role of the assessor and responsibilities. So
Everyone-
to get clarity on the
I
whole
called
thing.
the vote.
Is that fair?
yeah.
I mean, in all
think, you know,
reality,
what
we
it
don't
is
have to have a
specific would
motion.
be just
4 of us said
basically,
yes.
you know, it's statutes 42.11A, you know, the assessor role and supervisor role. So what does that mean clarity-wise? And then the clarity of the
This is getting
switching
too-
from supervisor to-
Call the
I
question.
had called the vote, so
Okay.
can we, sorry.
yeah,
Okay.
go. You gotta say all in favor.
So you heard the motion. The motion is to both have Mark confer with legal counsel regarding the change in title from manager to superintendent, and to also talk to legal counsel regarding the issues with the statutory issues regarding the assessor and responsibilities and roles of both the superintendent and the manager.
thank you.
All right.
Is that
And I
okay?
agree.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
clear.
you have
Is
the
that-
motion. you
Is
have
that what,
the
and
second.
are we all in agreement here
Yeah.
with that?
Yes,
Okay.
all we
In
just have
favor
to
of this,
vote.
say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay. So, last item, Board of Trustees annual review of board governance policy 4.1 unity of control.
God, here we go.
I'm not even gonna talk about this one.
We're in compliance. No,
No.
Um,
I lost my paper.
page 87.
Unless you guys want to beat the dead horse, it's fine.
What dead horse?
What's that? I mean, we kind of covered this one almost in our
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
half hour.
Yep.
I don't
This one
think
was
so.
covered in our last half.
This
hour.
is what's so important of our job as trustees. This is the meat of what we do.
Right.
This is a living document that helps us move the township forward with clarity and understanding and not get stuck in the quicksand of saying it's not clear when things are very clear. And comments have been said, get educated, learn, read how things are. This is what we do to try and get out of this craziness. My comments on this that I would like to discuss go to 4.1.1, and it reads, decisions or instructions of individual board members, officers, or committees are not binding on the township manager, except in rare instances when the board has specifically authorized such exercise of authority. I'm looking for clarity in the interpretation of except in rare cases. Is there an example that anybody can think of? That just seems,
It would seem to me that maybe if the board were to designate a person on a particular issue to talk to the manager, that we're bestowing that responsibility. I mean, is that the exception that's being sort of said there, is the way I see it?
I was just looking for interpretation
Yeah.
from the board, how you would make it clearer for anybody who wants to read our policy
Right,
to understand what we might be talking about there.
right.
Um,
So it's when it's a rare exception when the board is specifically authorized. So maybe we make it, we authorize one person on the board to talk to Mark about a particular issue, whatever that might be. So that person can serve as a spokesperson for the board, and we're giving that person the authority to do so.
to give a directive
Right.
to the manager. Okay, that helps me
Yeah, that's how I interpret it.
understand that.
And I think rare is trying to imply that that's not how we should normally operate.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. That's why the rare is, it's an exception to the rule.
Right.
Yeah.
And what else throws me a little bit in that is the line above that, right under the bold lettering of Board Policy 4.1, Unity of Control. And it gets into that term again. We're talking, in that line, only officially passed motions of the board are binding on the township management team. And it throws that term out there. But then you get into the meat of it. It's not talking about the township management team, it's only talking about the township manager.
Yes.
So to me, if this board isn't clear on that, this is exactly why we talk about this stuff. And I think that helps us create a document that we don't question.
Well, it also seems that if we change the title to superintendent, there'll be some cleaning up in this that's going to be taking place as well. And I think it will help provide clarity, not only in terms of supervisor manager, but also for us as a board. Because there are some things that sometimes the wording becomes a little bit confusing.
Yeah, I'm not sure how a change in Mark's title would change the management team, but I'd be looking forward to
Right.
seeing how it could impact
Yeah.
them.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so, I'm like pulling out of all the same parts you did, but this is how I'm taking it. And it's saying that, the manager can refuse requests, require manager's opinion. I don't know, it says it's binding on the management team, then why can the manager refuse the request? So, it's confusing, it's like contradicting to me, I think. So I don't know if the wording is good on this, or something. Because it's contradicting itself, like, from that part to that part. I don't know if that's just the way I'm reading it, or...
It seems slightly like it did to me, although we talk about management team. So it says nothing's binding on the management team that the board doesn't come to a or a majority decision on. And it leaves it right there. It stops right there. Should there be more added to that would clarify for us? Because then it just goes directly into the manager. But it also says the manager will not be bound to things that aren't prescribed and voted on by a majority of the board either. So it's listing both those things, but it seems like we jump.
I don't know,
Off
I
of
think it
the-
needs more wording in it or something.
So
It's confusing.
that's why we talk about this stuff.
It's probably getting late at night, and just to say that heck is good. Leave it alone.
I mean, if we can work on the wordings in maybe a later time, because I mean, this really kind of confused me a bit.
Now, we had
I mean,
some
I mean, 'cause
Well-
you're obviously reading it different than I did.
That's what we should do, yeah.
It's watching.
I think what you're saying,
Is that-
Tim, is that where it says the policy states, instead of township manager team should be the manager.
Yeah.
And then it has to flow all the way through, because I don't understand, because we as a board are bound to agreements or motions that we make and how we vote on things. So the management team, 1, 2, 3, are bound to those.
So it's all four of us. If you
Right.
read it, it's the management.
Yes.
like, with
So,
Mark.
Because I think the management team might have some autonomy, and I think are actually expected to get together and have meetings and review things. So maybe for this, as we look at it, that would be possibly a good suggestion to
Right.
take off management team and put manager there.
correct.
I'll try to read.
Because then there's the continuity there, and because it goes from the manager and team and it goes directly to the manager. So I think if you just have manager for the top part, then it connects, I think that connects the dots.
It seems to, unless that should also apply to the management team. that-
Right.
But I think that's what we should be looking
Well-
into and try to understand
Ma-
and come up with the wording.
My assumption is that the management team is bound by official actions by this board that are passed.
I would agree, so that is accurate in there.
Well, yes, but what I think this is also trying to provide is saying, but the manager's not accountable to individuals, right?
Yep.
Only accountable to
The board.
officially passed motions.
Yes.
Whereas
We should
I
say
feel
that
like
in there.
our management team already has that responsibility of following board decisions, period. Regardless of anything this says.
Yeah.
Right? And so the management team doesn't need an out, the manager does, to say, Norm, I'm not gonna do that, it's just you being crazy, can I pick on you?
Leave out the
That our
crazy.
manager's responsibilities and accountability are to the board and not individuals, and that's what, to
Right.
me, this is saying.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, now that makes
I think
sense,
the
but I mean,
public
I'd take out the
understands that
management
better
team
than
though
everything
still,
else.
because that,
So you're thinking
I
the
would take
wording
out the ma-
change is needed?
or say, but.
Yeah, the way I read it, I would say that needs to be manager. I mean, management team is already bound by any motions we pass, just like any of the trustees are, right? I mean, when we
Right.
act as a board, we're
You're
all
bound
in
by
line
that,
now, whether
yes.
you agreed with the original motion or not.
Yep.
Because
We
that's
talk
what
about
threw me
supporting.
off too.
So
What's
sim-
that?
It threw me off when it said management team, and then it started talking about the manager. I'm like, well, that doesn't, yeah.
Right, I mean, that is the feeling of this board, right, is
Yes.
once we take an action, if you had
Right.
issue with it, that is your stance too, at least from an
Exactly.
official perspective.
Exactly.
You may
Yep.
have personal feelings about it.
Correct.
Oh, your group, yeah.
But you have to voice the consensus of the board.
Right.
Right.
So I would make a motion that on policy 4.1, unity of control, we change the sentence that says, the policy states only officially passed motions of the board are binding on township management team, to read, only officially passed motions of the board are binding on the township manager.
Correct.
Support.
That sounds good.
Good catch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So we have to vote.
Motion
We
and
have a motion and a
support.
second, so let's vote on this. All in favor of changing the wording on 4.1, unity control, only officially passed motions of the board are binding on the township manager as opposed to township management team, say aye.
Aye.
Maybe we should say superintendent, because then that would, we wouldn't have to change.
That would just
We
change
wouldn't have to change
it
that line.
I was thinking that, huh?
And I guess direct the manager to make that happen,
That's funny.
make the changes.
I mean, 'cause it was confusing.
That brings us up to extended public comment. It's restricted to 5 minutes regarding one issue. For anyone who's on board for a 5-minute public comment session, I guess it's going to get to thinking about why did. So at this point, we'll close public comments. We've got item 12, manager's comments.
Just two, we have the first Recreation Authority Subcommittee meeting scheduled. It won't be held till November, I think, but at least it's scheduled. And then just in addition to other things, just on the 23rd board meeting, we will be looking at the classification compensation study. I know everybody's been wanting to do that again. And then, for good or bad, the governance policy 4.5 and my employment agreement suggests that every year we need to look at that, renewing that agreement and discussing if there's going to be any change to the compensation. So maybe that fits into compensation benefits, whatever we'll call them. Maybe that fits into 1023 as well in terms of a meeting agenda item, but we need to have that.
That sounds good to me.
That sounds good.
Yeah,
And you're
that-
saying that the classification compensation study, we're going to be discussing that's on the agenda?
That'll be a separate item on the
Okay,
agenda
excellent.
as
Okay.
well as at least an opportunity to look at that employment agreement.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
With item 13, at 9:46 in the evening, we just want to not worry about it. I think we've all
Well,
kind of worked ourselves up a little bit.
I was going to just ask people.
yeah, we're going to ask people.
In general, anybody have anything to say?
Yeah. I have something I want to say. I want to really commend Ryan for your oversight of our cybersecurity. I don't want to get too specific here. And the recommendations that you presented to each of us, as well as to our firm that we work with. And I think I want to just thank you for doing that. So you've been on board now for 2 weeks, and we're already reaping the dividends of your presence. So thank you.
May I?
Yes, sir.
Just so everyone's aware, I'm not a security expert, nor am I an email expert.
But you're a nerd.
But I'm a nerd, and I know enough to be dangerous. And in this case, my knowledge base did come in handy. But so thank you, Norm.
You're welcome. And thank you.
I want to say welcome.
Thanks.
Good addition. Thank you. All right, so nobody's wearing a hat. We lost Micah's. So
That's what I forgot.
Jim's got some stuff.
We're in final board comments, aren't we?
Yep.
All right. So, I believe November 1st, the state is going to roll out some rules about marijuana, recreational marijuana probably. So, we've done little to prepare ourselves and understand. I've been kind of pushing this year to get people in with various viewpoints to help us be positioned with some better knowledge to act. Because when things roll out, I think things could move fast if we decide to opt in or out, whichever direction we need to go with, either the medical or the recreational. But just wanted to point out that, we're right on the doorstep of the state putting out the rules for engagement in that. I know you watch the news and many communities, Petoskey, Mount Pleasant, they're already positioning themselves with an idea. We haven't really had enough discussion, I think, to
I thought we were opting out until
We
the
did.
second half of next year. Didn't we say we weren't gonna do anything until
We did opt
waited
out
to
of
see
it.
what the state had to say? Well, I thought we said like.
I think we did opt out.
Until, opt out
We
until
did.
the end of June.
Yeah,
to see what
and we said we wanted to take a wait and see.
Right.
And see, but by opting out, it gave us the legal right to prevent an enterprise coming in because without her opting out,
I
that
thi-
could happen.
I thought that was until the point that the state unrolls their rules. And
That's what I thought too.
so we might,
Yeah.
without clear recollection, 100%. I think when the state rolls it out, somebody can put a stake in the ground, and if we haven't made the right call, whether we want it or not, I'm not taking a position, I'm saying he might get something he didn't approve. So, just mentioning that trying to forewarn a little bit, that probably will be hitting our doorstep again sometime. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? Going once, going twice?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I think that's a good motion. All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
I need somebody to drive.